Welcome to another edition of C.O.P.E. C.O.P.E stands for Community's Own and Personal Elevation. And we do mean that. In bringing you this program on a weekly basis, we endeavor to bring interviewees that will highlight not only problems but solutions as well. And we'll be talking to people in all the areas: politics, sports, entertainment, the entire gamut, even religion. When we had started this program initially, we did some of the groundwork that eventually turned into a national program that is Hard Talk. And we have to take some of the credit for that as well, because we were the precursor for that particular program. Now, in thinking about what I wanted to say to you before I introduce my venerable guest for this program, I had to touch on Montego Bay. Lovely lady that she is. But you know, lovely lady in a tattered dress, beaten and battered. For what reason, I don't know. We used to be called the Friendly City. We used to be the Friendly City. I don't know what happened in the transformation. And it's as if it's some revelation as I sat earlier on thinking about what I would like to say for the monologue. It just rushed onto me that I need to say something. And it's highly relevant because my guest that I'll be introducing in a short period has so much to do with what I would call the glory days of Montego Bay. Something truly wonderful, something truly special. It's a very special gentleman, a very special guest indeed. I can't say that enough. And I don't say these things lightly. In spite of all the difficulties though, I like to remain hopeful that there is going to be a transformation. And Montego Bay, I don't like to harken back so much, but Montego Bay will see its glory days. I don't know on what I base this hope. Perhaps it's just pure faith. But I like to be optimistic in the face of so much that could make you really pessimistic and not give a hoot about what's happening. But hope springs eternally in my vein. And I have to keep hope alive. I don't know if I don't have hope. What else do I have? If I don't have hope and express hope, the people whom I influence, come in contact with, my family's close friends, what will they have? So we have to remain hopeful that Montego Bay will survive, will transform, and get back to where it used to be. Truly a beautiful lady that needs attention, love, care, and all the things to bring it back to that level. Montego Bay is beautiful, and a beautiful lady deserves hugs and kisses, not the kind of brutish, brute force, marauding type of thing that has been taking place. We need to get back. Instead of a fist, a caressing hand, a touch. Instead of weapons of war, warfare and destruction, can't we conjure up some weapons of love? And instead of destruction, building. Instead of thorns, give her a lovely rose or flowers. Montego Bay deserves that. Montego Bay deserves the very best. Jamaica deserves something wonderful, and we want to see that happen. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I'm not even going to take a break. I'm going to segue right into the introduction of our next guest. Our guest today is Mr. Francis Tulloch. And I say his name almost in the same vein as I would mention a Michael Manley, because this gentleman is a stalwart in politics, in business, in social life. Is so much a heart and soul of Montego Bay and surrounding environs. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce him on the program. We come to you from Hard Rock Cafe today. As per usual, Mr. Francis Tulloch, welcome. Welcome to COPE,
Glad to
Communities
be
Own
here.
and Personal
Glad to
Elevation.
be here.
Indeed, you're looking wonderful as I was saying earlier on.
The only thing that worries me about that is that the bulb gets bright when it goes about to blow, you know.
No, 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 no. Not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
Okay, okay.
I forbid that. Alright? I am going to invoke all the positive powers that I can to say that not at all.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, we're going to start at where we are right now. What have you been up to lately?
I have been living in Lethe,
Yeah.
Hanover, for the
Yeah.
past 30 years, and I've really enjoyed it. I really love the people of Lethe. They're now my family,
Yes.
and they've been very good to me, and I try my best to work with them to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
But you were saying something about the friendly city of Montego
Yes.
Bay that I really feel very, very frustrated about because we were a very friendly city.
Yeah.
I mean, no matter how difficult things were, Montego Bay, yes, now and again there was a few incidents of
Yeah.
violence, but
Hmm.
nothing like what we're putting up with today.
Yeah.
And it has given me great grief within my heart because the people of Montego Bay could not be more friendly because it's always been a very friendly city. I came here to Montego Bay in 1968 and it has been the happiest part of my life until recently.
Yeah.
But I am not giving up. I feel we will do it again. Let me say this that a lot of Jamaicans do not realize that the poor does not stand much hope in the culture of our politics. Because as long as the rich continues to support both political parties, the poor stand no chance. And that's what our country is facing now. For a long time I was out of politics, but in the last parish council election, I remember I remember driving in a car with some young people. And the driver of the car was very frank with me. He said, Mr. Tulloch, we know you, but I must make it quite clear to you. We are voting for the party who pay us more money.
Yeah.
And he even gave me a hint that they are expecting money closer to the closing of the polls than in the morning,
Yeah.
because that's when the money is now paid to voters. But that's only a small part of it. The big problem that Jamaica has now is that the rich supports both political parties. And as long as the rich continues to support both political parties, the poor stand no chance. I find it most grievous when I see certain things happening, when I know what is happening. I remember in 1995, I did all I could to try to get the government, because I was a Minister of State for Tourism,
Yeah.
to try to get the government to make politicians make public they own and their assets, etc. And I wrote letters to the Prime Minister, and I remember him sending the present leader of the opposition to my place at Liti to speak to me about it. And Peter Phillips was definitely in favor
Yeah.
of all politicians on, from both political parties
Declaring their assets.
declaring their assets publicly. And he was chairman of the Integrity Commission, and he was leading that hope. But I won't call any name, but I must say that at a particular stage he was no longer chairman of the Integrity
Yeah.
Commission, or at any rate he was no longer leading the the group
The
that
charge.
was
Yes,
meeting
yes.
to try and ensure that Jamaica becomes an honest country. But it was the first time in my life I saw two very influential members in politics, one supporting the GLP and one supporting the PNP, who agreed with each other
Yes.
that we should never ever make assets of politicians public because of the culture of the
Yes.
country. They all agree that without the help of the rich, politicians could not survive.
Yeah.
And this was in 1996. It's almost 22 years since this was happening. And I believe recently the leader of the opposition and the prime minister
Yeah.
made their assets and what they own public recently.
Yeah.
And that was only because there was
Public pressure.
public pressure.
And to be honest with you, it seemed as if it was done in a way that we're still not satisfied. There were a lot of questions more than answers, especially in relation to one of them. But what I want to do is, um, you said something a little earlier on, and as low as my pen was to the table, it almost fell out of my hand about the hijacking of both political parties by the wealthy. It is very surprising indeed, and not in the least bit hidden. For those of us who are willing to look on, will see what has been happening and what is indeed happening. What I want to do, though, is I want to take you back to an earlier time, um, in the 60s, and a little earlier on before the introduction. And it was important for me to allow you to say all the things that you said earlier on, especially as it relates to Montego Bay. Because a lot of people would be surprised that you're not a Montegonian.
No,
Where are you from and how did you end up in Montego Bay?
I am from Kingston, Vineyard Town, Marion Road. My father was an alpha boy.
Yes,
He was raised by nuns, and
yes,
he was a great. He became the alpha band master, and he was really a great musician.
yes, sir.
He did well for not only his family, but he was like many Jamaicans an illegitimate child.
Yes,
But that does not stop anybody from being great.
yes,
And he was brought up by Catholic nuns and at Alpha, and he became a musician. But let me say this: I'm Catholic.
yes,
As a matter of fact, I'm deacon of the
yes,
Catholic Church.
church.
But I think the Catholic Church really did a wonderful job in those days.
Yes,
It was Catholic nuns
yes,
who were at the various hospitals and places where leprosy and
Yes.
things like that was. And we really miss them.
Yes.
We really miss them. But our great problem now is this. When I entered politics in 1968
Yes.
in Jamaica, I entered it because Jamaicans had helped the Bahamas government to become black.
Aye.
And a year after they did that, the Bahamas started to deport Jamaicans from Nassau.
Yes.
And I understood their situation, but my situation and my Jamaicans were more important
Yeah.
because Mr. Pinion was able to form a black government for the first time in the Bahamas
Yeah.
because the Jamaicans in Freeport, where he had me as a lawyer, won a seat for them
Yeah.
that they have never won in their entire existence, the black people.
Wow.
Because Jamaicans who have a work permit have a vote in the
Yes.
Bahamas. And for the first time, they were winning a seat that was in Grand Bahama,
Yeah.
a seat that they usually lost, the black Bahamian,
Mm-hmm.
the People's Party.
Party.
And when that happened, I had no choice. It's not that I was annoyed with the
Yeah.
Bahamians. I was annoyed with the Jamaican government
Yeah.
that our Jamaicans could be deported by a colony,
Yes. Yes.
newer and independent.
Yes.
It really hit me hard. I didn't know much about Jamaican politics. I still don't
Yeah.
know much about Jamaican politics, but I did end up becoming a candidate for the
Yes.
People's National
What
Party.
year was this when the mass deportation?
1968.
1968.
And it was in 1967 that Mr. Pinion was able to form the first black government by winning one seat
Yes.
more than the United Bahamian
Yes.
Party. And so it was, I know, and Mr. Pinley knows, and Dudley Thompson knows,
Yeah.
he was the one who got me to go to the Bahamas. I had no idea I was going into the Bahamas for politics
Yes.
because Prime Minister Bustamante had offered me a diplomatic job in England
Yeah.
where he knew I wanted to take my brother that was
Yes.
mentally retarded,
Yeah.
and he thought it was a very good thing
Opportunity for him.
for me. And
Why didn't you take up that opportunity though?
Dudley Thompson convinced
Intervene.
intervened.
How did he convince you? Tell us.
No, he would not. He got me to go to the Bahamas a couple of times to
Yes.
speak with Mr. Pinland, and I really was only interested at the time in ensuring that my brother, who was
Yes.
retarded, got the best treatment. And I was assured
Yeah.
that this would happen because of the type of money I would be making in the Bahamas.
Yeah.
But to be very honest with you, when I saw how the Bahamians were being treated, the black
Yes.
Bahamians, I was happy that I was doing what I was doing. I was running a political office. I
Yeah.
was running a law office. I
Yeah.
was running a
No
political
political
office.
office.
But it worked out, and amazingly, for the first time, um, the Bahamians, you see, Finland had a slogan that Bahamas for the
Yes.
Bahamians.
Of course.
So naturally, all foreigners
Yes.
would be supporting
Thing.
him.
Yeah.
But because as a Jamaican, I was in Mr. Pinland's office. All the Jamaicans and West Indians,
Yeah.
including even some Canadians,
Gave him support.
gave him support. And unfortunately, um, not in Freeport, Grand Bahama, but there was some problems with Jamaicans that
Yeah.
I knew absolutely nothing about.
Yeah.
In Nassau,
Yeah.
the capital.
Yeah.
And he went away to Africa, and the black Bahamians were planning to um, create havoc when he was supposed to arrive back from Africa
Okay.
because of Jamaicans and other West Indian and Haitians
Yeah.
who were living in the Bahamas.
Yeah.
And I had to come home. I had to come home, but God was so good that He made a very rich Canadian who I met once
Yeah.
get the best examination for my brother in Canada.
Yeah.
And it turned out well. The doctors in Canada advised us that what we were doing for our brother
Yeah.
and my mother, what she was doing for her son, could not be better.
Yeah.
And so it worked out. And when I came home, because I was in the Bahamas, I decided that the best place for me to be was Montego Bay because of tourism.
Okay.
And that's when I began working
So
politically.
you wanted to get involved in tourism when you came home. In
Right.
in what aspect of it you wanted to? As a tour operator, hotelier, or what?
No. Just politically,
Yeah.
I've always wanted to have been the Minister of Tourism
Tourism.
because I learned a lot about it in the Bahamas. And one of the greatness about the Bahamas is that a foreigner can't own 51% of an inbound shop or a store or anything.
Yeah.
It has to be owned by a Bahamian. Even though the Bahamian might only own 5% or
Yes.
get something for it,
Yes. But it has to
the,
be in their
I
name.
mean, it has to be in their name.
Why haven't we done something similar in Jamaica?
Again, it goes, the inbound merchant, the Chinese, all these people support the political parties. So, it goes back right to the thing. And let me say it, Michael Manley. Michael Manley tried to change this.
All right.
He did
I
try to change it.
I am going to be taking a short break right here,
Right.
and then we'll come back because I want to touch on that relationship and that bit as well. Hope will return in a few minutes. Thank you. Some businesses are the best kept secret in town, known only to a few friends and family. Advertising just can't be too much. Otherwise, Coca-Cola, KFC, and Burger King, all the big companies would cease to advertise. Instead, they advertise, and then advertise some more. Follow their good examples and let CTV introduce you to affordable, effective advertising. Don't delay. Call us today at 326-8747 or 396-6060. Advertise so they know. Advertise to grow. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to C.O.P.E. And we're talking to Mr. Francis Tulloch, politician, businessman, statesman, a great man indeed. And today I'm feeling wonderful because I'm sitting in the presence of political greatness. Mr. Tulloch, just before we took the break, we touched a little bit on Michael Manley. I I can go on record as being a complete fan of a gentleman. As the interviewer, I would be remiss in withholding my excitement when I mention that name and the great potential. I think, in my opinion, and having surveyed the vast landscape of our politics, misunderstood, there's a tremendous amount of misinformation, and so many other things that don't do justice to the efforts he made to transform the Jamaican society and the contributions that he made that catapulted us to certain levels that are truly undeniable. I would like you to tell me a little bit about your relationship with him and what he meant to Jamaica and some of the obstacles that he faced.
Well, you have to understand that democratic socialism was perhaps harmful to political propaganda in that Michael Manley wasn't talking about being a communist country. He was talking about securing the same lands that I want and building houses for the poor, building businesses and agriculture, because agriculture is our only hope. We don't have any other. Agriculture and tourism, God gave us beauty
Yes.
and God gave us land and water.
Water.
It is tremendous what we were trying to do. Unfortunately, there were some people who made us look communist instead of socialist.
Yes.
People outside of our party who were rich
Mm-hmm.
and people inside our party who were more ideological rather than practical.
Okay.
Michael was not a communist. Michael Manley, because of his charisma and his knowledge and his greatness, was the leader of the third world. And he was a magnificent leader of the third world. But unfortunately, democratic socialism was used to put a communist flavor on the People's National Party. And Michael had to do things just for us to get back in power. He had to start speaking less about socialism. He had to start being more friendly to the rich.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, when he won the election in 1989, I believe he realized that he would not have won if he had not got some support from the rich.
Yeah.
I believe, although he died maybe 4 or 5 years later, he could have given us more time as a leader.
Yeah.
But I honestly believe Michael saw where he would not be able to achieve within his lifetime what had to be achieved for the Jamaican people, which was the democratic socialism that we should not have named democratic socialism, that we should have just done.
Yes. Would you say he died heartbroken?
I personally believe he was not, it could not have been the happiest death for Michael Manley, but I know he began to realize that we were in trouble.
I want to ask you along that line. Hold on, school after. who benefited from the obstacles that he faced and who suffered the most?
Well, when a prime minister or a leader of the opposition, remember it was Mr. Siaga's campaign was money must jingle in your pocket.
Yes.
And certainly money wasn't jingling in Jamaica, the pockets of Jamaica. We were starting, we had markets that were selling agriculture. You know, we were prepared. The people of Granville, I slept with 1,000 people from Granville on the retirement property when we got the retirement property. And they were all planting food stuff. This
Yeah.
was in 1977.
Yes.
Um, the people was going Michael Manley's way, but unfortunately, the Jamaica Labour Party was able to put a spanner that really messed up
The wheel.
the, and it is regretful. And we came back. I think I remember Siaga introducing some little carts that they used to push around the place. I can't remember the name.
I wouldn't know them either. I wish.
But I
Yes.
remember that. And Jamaica changed drastically after 1980.
80.
It was a different country. We we were supposed to be getting so much help from the United States that we didn't get.
What happened to that? Because as a celebrated capitalist, friend of the US, as opposed to a Michael Manley, who was the so called enemy of the United States, and all the support that the rich would have given. Because the formidable opposition that Michael Manley faced, which was very real, as opposed to the support that Edward Seaga got when he was elected. Ronald Reagan flew down, congratulated him, and all of that. Why didn't that materialize in the betterment for Jamaica, and especially the upliftment of the majority people who were so far left behind and continue to be left behind, and is now at a point where the implosion is what we see taking place, and is causing the decline and the blot on this lovely land of ours, including Montego Bay, which is under the spotlight.
Okay, I think we were only able to get Radio Shack. I think it was Radio Shack who built a building, who came into business in Jamaica. But that was a terrible failure. What Siago
Yeah.
had brought to the Jamaican people. And the hurtful part for me is when I saw all the marketing places that the People's National Party had opened, they were closed down. Every time I drive along the Spanish Town Road or along Marcus Garvey Drive and see those buildings closed that used to market products for poor people, we were learning to plant. We were learning to live off agriculture. If you look at St. Elizabeth, the people of St. Elizabeth have had a wonderful life from agriculture. And they
Wonderful
don't,
indeed.
and they have no water.
Amazing. Truly amazing.
They have no water. Now, St. James, Hanover, all these places have
Oh, plenty water.
everything that we need to make Jamaica a wonderful place. But unfortunately, it isn't working. But our only hope is agriculture. and tourism.
Yeah.
We are the most beautiful country in the world. But again, as Minister of Tourism, I remember getting approved by the cabinet and by the Ministry of Labour what somebody would need, a foreigner would need to get a job in Jamaica.
Yeah.
And it did, although it was approved, it was never used. Anybody can come to Jamaica now and get a job in the tourist industry. We have helpers coming in from the Philippines that Jamaicans are employing and foreigners are employing. We have helpers who are speaking Spanish, and the poor people continues to suffer. And that is why I believe there's violence in Montego Bay, because Montego Bay was never an area where there was a lot of killing. Jamaica was a hell of a country when it came to crime, you know. We had no crime. The crimes I can remember is Reagan and Whopper King.
Yes.
There were no other serious crimes in Jamaica. And there was a headless corpse in Porter too.
Yes.
I remember those three. Jamaica was a very peaceful country.
Pretty much.
And we were a country that all of us were proud of. However, it is not the same anymore. But I believe we can make it. I really believe we can make it. But as long as our the culture of our politics continues, as long as the rich controls both political parties, we do not stand a chance.
I am going to ask the PNP, People's National Party, was born on an ideology of representing the masses who it was as clear as day needed some championing to bring them into respectability, recognition of their citizenship, um, a part of the Jamaican dream that they were more or less excluded from. The Jamaica Labour Party, from day one, understanding the party that pretty much had a closer link with the plantocracy, the leaders of business and industry, and the children of what I would call the slave owners and so forth. Because pretty much, unless you close your eyes, then you wouldn't be able to see. That was how it was seen by a lot of people. What then would have caused the hijacking of the People's National Party, who had that ideological bent to champion the cause of the poor and dispossessed, to bring them into a level of respectability, as opposed to GLP, who pretty much had set their foundation along that line, whether accidentally or purposely? What would have caused them to arrive almost at a situation where there's hardly anything distinguishing both of them?
Uh, and that's and that's a sadness. There's still people in the People's National Party who know the difference, but it goes right back to what I'm saying. It's not policy that wins elections these days. It's not your policy. It's not what you have done or what you have not done. What wins election today is who have the better campaign, who has more money to give at election time, and as and that is what has smashed our country. We have great Jamaicans, very educated. We're losing them all to foreign countries because there is nothing here for them. there is absolutely nothing here for them. You know, one of the questions I've always tried to understand is, you know, the prime minister was able to save taxes, the present prime minister,
Yeah.
by buying his house by a foreign company.
Yeah.
No, I cannot understand why nobody sees that there's nothing wrong with this, you know. It has always amazed me that um, nobody has ever said that the prime minister, why would he buy a house that where you would not have to pay eh, practically any taxes in Jamaica? Am I saying something wrong? Because if I am, please, was the prime minister's company or house bought by a foreign company?
Well, the funny situation about that is, and I looked at it and saw how the narrative had changed. Um, Jamaica is a different and a difficult kind of place. And what happened is, if you see a man with a big house and he didn't get it by legitimate means, and you said anything about the house, if he said that is grudge, you grudge him for the house, everything else goes out the window. That's all you need to say now. Say I grudge, you grudge him for the house. You know. The Prime Minister understood the Jamaican mentality to a T. And when he came up and made the utterances about grudgefulness for big house and all of that, man, that was a stroke of genius. Because a people who education has avoided, and they themselves have avoided education, and are capable of the kind of thinking that would allow them to connect the dots, because there's so much noise being made in our society that people aren't thinking anymore. The powers of discernment dampened by so many things, your own needs, your own desires, your own wants, and so forth. So it was hard, and still is hard, for a lot of people to connect and to see where that conversation was going, because in any decent country in the world it couldn't happen. Your head of state could not enjoy such a benefit, because that example need to be set so that the populace can follow. Because if my prime minister is avoiding um, taxes and finding a tax haven, therefore it speaks to all of us, then that we should be seeking that. That is not patriotic.
So
So you
why?
could not be wrong.
So why we don't hear anything further on this? This is what I don't understand.
The narrative was changed by a clever bit of public relations. You heard what I just said?
Clever.
If you see a man with an illegal car, fine car, is driving, and you know that he got it by illicit means, and you say anything about it, if he just says that is grudging for his car, he need not say anything more. And that was what was said. And the people, the masses, understood that more than anything else. In Jamaica now, the kind of environment we live in, it doesn't matter how you get it. It matters that you have it. And that's where we are. 50 Cent, um, a notable rapper in a song, said, get rich or die trying. It has welded itself into the minds of our young people, who are impatient with the lot of their parents, their grandparents, and their parents, who suffered, and by the dint of hard work were able to scrape through and have a little bit. Now they're not interested in a little bit. They're very impatient with things the way they are, and they want it now. Instant gratification is very important. The need for conspicuous consumption, very, very important. We must have it now. We must have it. We must get rich or die trying. That environment has been created, nurtured. Education, the training and so forth that has avoided their parents, their grandparents, and their parents, where they're not prepared for citizenship, responsible citizenship. It has caught up to the nation in such a way now that their children who are not educated and prepared for much, but want the things that education and training could get you, no, they will get it by any means necessary. And that is where we are today. We have lost more or less the mark. Now, having tied in very clearly that the parties are more or less hijacked by wealth, and some people within the parties are coming out and basically saying the very same thing. I remember Damian Crawford talking about big money and what big money is doing to the party. How can that, or is there any hope of any changes? Because Jamaica needs public servants, people who go into politics, not for their own personal aggrandizement and enrichment, but going to serve. How are we ever going to get back there, or can we get back there?
All right, let me tell you what my hope is as far as what you're saying. Um, as I say, as long as the rich continue to support both political parties, there is no hope for the poor. Let me make that quite clear. I believe it, and that cannot change because they have to do what the rich tells them to do. Now, what I believe, and I would really like to see Jamaica make an experiment where the political parties are supported by a specific amount of funds by the government, where both political parties have the same amount of advertisement. Both political parties are totally equal in whatever they are promoting. In other words, wherever they are able to really tell what, because let me tell you, after an election you hear nothing about a manifesto again. You know, it's the
No,
only
no.
country in the world that you only hear about a manifesto
Prior to
before
the
the
election.
prime election. Now, I believe that the poor people who pay their little taxes, it is better they support the political parties with a little part of their
Yes.
taxes than the rich. As long as the rich continues to support the poor stands no
No chance. As
chance.
long as they continue to support the political parties. What what about ideology? Doesn't play any role
No,
anymore?
no, but no, which party, which person? The Governor General's speech for both political parties is usually what you hear about. The other thing that I'm hoping will happen in Jamaica, I would like to see us have an experiment. Maybe we'll be the first country that's doing it. But crime will not end in Jamaica as long as money begin to flow around the place and all the other things that are happening. I believe that it is possible that Jamaica could try to stop using cash and use a credit card for every single
Transaction.
transaction. You would have to make certain
Yes.
you'd have to make
Certain
certain
changes.
changes for the
But we're getting there, no, cashless system. A lot of people
yeah.
don't carry cash. They use credit card.
That's yes, but that's what I'm saying. It
Yes.
is possible.
Yeah.
We would have to make special arrangement for the poor,
Yes.
But a credit card is the only thing that we should be using because the cash is what is passing not only from the rich to the political parties, but in crime.
Yeah.
And it would be a fantastic experiment for a country like us of 2 point something million people to see if that could work. Because if that could work, crime would end.
That's truly revolutionary. I want to ask you a little bit about campaign financing, as you were mentioning. There's so much talk about it. There's also talk about constitutional reform. Why are those things only talk from time immemorial until now?
And for one, campaign financing, you know, look, I'm one of them that has no respect for money people who get a OG.
Yes.
If you give a certain amount of help, you get a OG. If you
Mm.
give more help, you get a OG.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, don't get me wrong now. You have people who should get OG that don't get it.
Don't get it.
And you have many people like teachers and community people and things like that who more than deserve
Mm.
what they're getting.
Not
Because
even the consideration they don't get.
that's right. But I'm not saying there are a lot of people who have got um, OJs and ODs who deserve it.
Yes.
But the more money you give to a political party, trust me, the bigger.
The consideration for you.
And that's the sadness about it.
You know, in wrestling with everything that I do on a daily basis, especially politically, it's funny that you have almost brought me to face with the brick wall. Almost face to face with the brick wall. I am trying now to see because in trying to look forward, even beyond to find a crack or so, to look beyond what is present. Because to move sideways is not helpful in either direction. And to retreat is still not helpful. We have to find some hope in within the young people within the party, because as we look at both political parties and we see people within the parties who are in their 70s who are still plodding along and making promises of things that should have been delivered a long time ago. My God, can't they take a seat now so that some younger people can emerge to get some things done?
Well, let me see this. I would love to see a referendum on how what should happen with political donations, whether it should be paid by the people
Yeah.
or by the rich. That's something
Yeah.
I would love to see, that there would be a referendum. I also believe that people like things like
Term limit?
the different government companies that give out contracts
Yes.
should have not only government appointed members, but should have the opposition
Yeah.
have
Yeah, the contracts commission
that's
and
right,
places like that. Yeah.
you know both political parties. Of course, the government would have more
Yes,
people on it.
but having opposition members there as an oversight to ensure that there's
That's right.
transparency.
Correct.
But what about term limits? You don't believe in to a certain extent that
I
at a
do.
certain point,
I do not believe
yeah,
that a prime minister should have more than 2 terms. Um, and we have to do something about all those different problems. We must have a serious referendum if we are going to save this country. I honestly believe that if a man have the abilities to scam, the scammers must have an ability because it's not an easy thing to scam.
Yeah.
So that scammer, I believe, could make a fantastic contribution to our country,
Given the opportunity.
given a proper opportunity
Yeah.
to come become what he wants. But they are left alone in their villages. When I go into a village today, I will see a 15-year-old girl pregnant with a baby still holding in her hand. And I will see a young man with a spliff in his mouth playing domino or ludo or something. For
Yeah, not gainfully employed or occupied with anything sensible.
we have neglected the poor in such a vicious way that we have failed this one.
Let me hasten to say something to you because I try to be fair-minded um, in virtually everything I do, and in politics as well. In trying to defend the the argument, um, PNP's contribution to the nation vis-a-vis the JLP. One of the things that is often said out in the streets that the PNP had the longest unbroken tenure of service to the nation, and as a result of it is responsible for most of the sins um, that we see prevalent in our society now. How do you view that type of conversation?
There's a certain amount of truth in that we did have the government for quite some time. P.J. Patterson did try, and he was the longest prime minister.
Yes.
P.J. Patterson did try when I can't. What was it? He was trying to bring
Values and attitude.
the country together.
Yeah.
I'll never forget the meeting that we had, the first meeting with the GFP and the PNP, because I really thought that, this was
A new day.
unfortunately it ended the same day because of a speech the then Governor General made. His praise was totally for PJ.
Yes.
You can't have that when you have the leader of the
The
opposition
position.
and all the other
Stakeholders.
stakeholders. And it didn't work. It didn't work because once again it just looked like a PNP thing.
So a thorn was thrown.
It died. It died
Instant death.
instantly. But I do believe that it's just the only chance we have now is for the PNP and the JLP to sit down and work out a way forward. Work out a way forward to make sure you have an opportunity, to make sure that the rich does not continue to control them, because Jamaica is the smallest and greatest country in the world. If you look at anything that we do, Jamaica is a great country. Sometimes I cry, when I see, you hear that 3 people get killed or 4 people get killed playing domino. The politicians, including myself, still messing up this country. If if the leader of the opposition and the prime minister sit down really put the country first and not who going to win the next election. Because Jamaica can be the greatest little country.
You know what? The wall has just been broken down. And there's that hope, that springs eternal, brought back into the context of the conversation. Because this conversation between us couldn't end in hopelessness. And that is what needs to happen. So no one political party will be able to make that transformation. But I am overjoyed by what you said. But by both political parties coming together and sitting down at the table and saying, look, this is a new day to transform the country, to make it what it ought to be, giving it its best chance for success. That is what needs to happen.
So
The people are going to have to drive that, because I don't believe that the political parties by themselves will come to that realization and decide we're going to have to drive them to the table to sit down, and the people are going to have to do that.
and when you have the time, I'm going to send you a note that Michael Manley said.
I would appreciate that greatly. A great man indeed. Every day I call his name, like I call Bob Marley's name or whatever. And many instances I've had to be defending him, because I think there's a misunderstanding of what he tried to do um, for this country. And no man facing the kind of formidable opposition that he faced could truly have overcome. He was fighting the enemy without and within. And I know, and I'm clear in my mind every day, and all the information that I try to ferret out, that he was on the right path in trying to educate, to liberate the people.
That was what it was all. That was what it was all. But unfortunately, there were elements in the party that wanted it to be more ideological than and
The enemies that he had to face outside as well.
because you remember he had to the first prime minister that demonstrated against when they did certain things with the Cubans.
Yes, of course, of
But
course.
you know, he's a great man, not perfect,
Yes.
but he was on the right track.
Definitely. And it has been proven up to this day that Cuba is more friend to us than enemy, having built so many wonderful things right here in Jamaica, and could have done more that we would have benefited from had we not been so short-sighted.
They continue to help.
Yes. And help other nations around the world,
They continue.
even in the roughest of time. I saw them being hit by hurricane and packing up people to send to help people around the world who had similar situations. Truly great.
But you know, we can make it, but we can't make it with the present culture.
Of division, it must be one of unity. Well, on that note, I would like to signal the conclusion of this interview, because I tell you, I am overjoyed at having this interview with you, one, and two, that there is hope.
No, we are going to make it. I believe that we are going to make it. We're going to make
Yes. If it's even a glimmer of hope,
it.
it must be there. And I appreciate it very much.
It was a
Thank you
pleasure.
for making it cool. Mr. Toll, there's so much more that we could talk about,
Yeah, we
but
will.
time don't permit. A part one, a part two, a part three, and a part four.
Let us see what happens, you know, within the next year.
Yes,
But we are a great country.
yes. And I like that. In the presence of greatness, Mr. Francis Tulloch. Thank you very much. All right. Have a good one. Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our program for today. It was a pleasure talking to Mr. Francis Tulloch. One love.